And hello, everybody. Welcome into SEC Talk heading into week number 7. Today's episode, we're going to be going into our week 6 recap and a kind of a lackluster slate here in the Southeastern Conference outside of Alabama and Vandy. Then outside of the conference, we definitely had a wild upset with UCLA taking down Penn State and Miami, making a statement this week and in Tallahassee against Florida State. So it was a pretty lackluster weekend. Football is football, I guess, so we're not going to be complaining. So, Wade, how was your weekend?
It was good, yeah. Like you said, not too much to watch, but sometimes those are the weekends that end up being pretty memorable. It just wasn't that way in the conference, but out of the conference, a big upset. Penn State got knocked off by UCLA. I don't think anybody saw that one coming.
No.
And then, of course, the in-conference upset too, with Texas and Florida. So a little bit to talk about. But yeah, much calmer compared to last week, man. I mean, it was packed.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we went from like the highest of highs, it feels like, to the lowest of lows. So I mean, outside those two upsets that we had, I mean, there wasn't really like that good of a matchup. So, but we'll talk about all of our top 4 games that happened this weekend. There was only 5 SEC games in action. So sorry, Oklahoma fans, we're not going to be talking about your 44-0 win over Kent State, though. You continue to look impressive, even without John Mateer in that game. But let's go ahead and start off before we get into our games. Just a reminder to everyone watching the show, both on Facebook and on YouTube, if you have any questions pertaining to your favorite team, how they did and how they performed, or maybe if your team was just on the bye week and what you're looking forward to heading into week number 7, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave us a comment in the comment section down below, and we will get to it at the end of our hot topic segment right here at the end of the show. So like I mentioned, we're going to dive right into our top 4 games from the SEC this past weekend. We're going to start off with the first upset of the conference between number 9 Texas and Florida. And to be honest with you, I was very on the fence about picking Florida. It just felt like this was a perfect spot. Coming off of the bye week of Florida, I mean, Billy Napier's job is pretty much on the line at this point. If he probably lost this one against Texas, who knows if he survives. But once again, Florida, 29-21. You could call it an upset, but to be honest with you, Florida dominated this one. I mean, it was only an 8-point win for the Gators, but it felt more than that. You really saw Florida's offensive line and defensive line really take over this game. You saw DJ Lagway really improve over the bye week heading into this matchup against, a very talented Texas defense. But it was actually Florida's run game and Jadon Ball over 100 yards rushing. So the rushing game, once again, was big for the Gators. And Florida's defense was able to cause a lot of turnovers. I mean, Arch Manning just continues to look bad every single week. And that's why I was going to be picking with Florida. In the end, I went with Texas. I won't be making that same mistake again because Arch Manning and this Texas team just looks out of sorts, man. I don't even know why I picked this team. I guess I bought into the hype too much of this Texas team heading into the season. They lost a lot of their wide receivers. They lost a lot on defense, and it's definitely showing at the position that it matters the most at quarterback. You go to a consistent guy like Quentin Ewers to Arch Manning, who's really getting his first taste of these road environments, and the swamp was loud even when a team, is 1-3 like them. So Florida, with this statement win, now moves to 2-3 overall. They got a big one coming up in College Station. Texas got a big matchup against Oklahoma. But Wade, I know that, you were kind of on the fence. I think you actually had Texas as one of your more disappointing teams. So obviously talk about Texas, but what does this mean for Florida moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think Texas would already have 2 losses at this point, but I did say anything short of national championship and Heisman Trophy honors for Arch Manning was going to be a disappointment because, I mean, everybody hyped up Texas all preseason. They had a lot of returning talent, but they also had a fairly new offensive line, wide receiver core, and the defense hasn't been as stout as we imagined. So some of those concerns have definitely come to reality, and this is one that you just can't lose. I mean, if it's understandable to lose the opener to Ohio State, and it would be understandable to go lose to Georgia and Athens or somewhere else, but now you got to make this game up at some point because this is ugly. And kind of like that LSU loss to Ole Miss, it changes your perception of the team, and then you start to question, hey, can they beat Oklahoma? Can they beat Texas A&M at the end of the year? And all of a sudden, you nitpick ways that, hey, this team on paper looks worse than those two teams, and all of a sudden they're a 7-5, 8-4 team. So, yeah, a lot of reason for concern. I mean, for Florida, it's deja vu. They came out the bye last year and rattled off like 6 straight wins. So I don't know if they're the Cincinnati Bengals of the SEC and they just start out every year bad. If that's the case, please schedule LSU at the beginning like we did this year. But yeah, a little bit of a head scratcher here for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. They can rattle off those 6 wins. It's a tough slate coming up, but this was like one of the key games coming out of the bye week. We were saying like, okay, you have Miami, you have LSU at the start of the season, and then after the bye week, you have Texas A&M back-to-back weeks. And can you at least like take one of those? So this was definitely a huge win for the Gators moving forward, especially if they do want to get to bowl eligibility, because it's going to be hard once you get to this slate coming up to find some wins. But Texas already with 2 losses. It feels like at this point they have to win out to make the college football playoff. I just don't really see those chances, and that's definitely going to be a disappointing season for Longhorn faithful. So we'll see if Texas can bounce back. Florida, though, with a big victory. Now let's move on to our SEC talk game of the week between number 16 Vanderbilt and number 10 Alabama. Now, at the start of the game, it was going to be looking like Vanderbilt was going to do what they did last year. You saw Cedric Alexander with that 65-yard touchdown run, and it was immediately Vandy was up 7-0. And then Vanderbilt gets the ball back. They're driving down the field, and then Alabama's defensive tackle punches out the football from Diego Pavia. So if it wasn't for that fumble, it could have easily been, a 10-0, 14-0 lead. But I feel like outside of that, Alabama and Ty Simpson. I mean, Ty Simpson, we got to talk about him. I mean, he could be offensive player of, the year for us here on the show, but could even be getting into that discussion for the Heisman Trophy, just depending on how Alabama performs over the next couple of weeks leading into November. But this Alabama team is definitely starting to play like how I thought they would at the start of the season. They had that loss against Florida State. That definitely woke them up. You saw how they performed last weekend in Athens and now this week against a Vanderbilt team that was very physical on the defensive line. And then we saw Jam Miller with a big game. Then you saw the 2 wide receivers really get involved here, Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. But Vanderbilt, just too many miscues, especially by Diego Pavia. You had 2 interceptions and a fumble that ultimately cost you in the defense. Just too many times that they were on the field there. So Alabama was able to come away with a late touchdown. I know if you had Alabama 12.5, you were pretty content. If you had Vandy covering this one, you weren't. So Jam Miller was able to get that late touchdown to put this one 30-14. But if you're an Alabama fan, it definitely has to feel good to get over the hump and beat Vandy this time.
Yeah, definitely a lot of revenge. Never did I think I'd see Alabama fans like taunting and just generally disgusted with Vanderbilt. Like usually they're the team that comes in and it's just like a charity case game. But definitely a lot of hard feelings after last year's upset. And Alabama continues to trend in the right direction. Like you said, Simpson's playing really well. And that defense is starting to live up to the hype. So, I mean, teams that are going in the wrong direction, like Texas, better watch out because Alabama and Ole Miss, Texas A&M, they're all surging.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vanderbilt with the loss, they'll head into the bye week. Then coming off of the bye, they'll be back in Nashville with a big time test against LSU. Bama will go on the road to Columbia, Missouri to face off against the Tigers. That's going to be another top 15 battle that we're going to be seeing once again. So Alabama, they've already played Georgia, they played Florida State, so the schedule won't ease up for the Crimson Tide moving forward, but they are definitely looking strong. Now let's move on to our next game, Mississippi State at number 6, Texas A&M. And A&M, they just continue to impress me week in and week out. It was 31-9. Now this was a very similar start. Kind of. It was just like a very similar start to what we saw with Vanderbilt in Alabama. It felt like Mississippi State really controlled the first quarter. They were driving on one of their early drives. They had to settle for a field goal, and then they had a wide open touchdown. And then the Texas A&M defender was able to get into Blake Shapen, and Blake Shapen threw an interception. And I feel like outside of that, Mississippi State's offense just really couldn't move the football whatsoever. We saw the struggles of Texas A&M's defense at the start of the season. They gave up a ton of points to both like UTSA, then Utah State, and then Texas A&M faced off against Notre Dame, and they had to use their offense to that. But Texas A&M's offense really struggled out the gate there. You just got to give credit to Mississippi State's defense. They've really been solid. Marcel Reed didn't really start off the game hot, but in the second half, he was able to find Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. I know that you picked Le'Veon Moss, but it was actually Ruben Owens being the more running back one there. He got a couple of touchdowns. Like you mentioned off stream here, Le'Veon Moss would have had a touchdown if it wasn't for a holding call. But Texas A&M absolutely routes Mississippi State here. I thought that Mississippi State was going to keep this one close, especially the way that they've been playing. But that offense just got absolutely shut down by the Aggies. So what are your overall thoughts, on A&M? Could this be not only an SEC title contender, but maybe a national title contender?
I think so, just because we talked about this last week too. They just win in different ways. This was a team that was up 7-3 against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's not an offensive juggernaut. They're not a bad offense. I think they've made great strides, but for them to get shut down against A&M, I think that says a lot. But at the same point, A&M's offense was really struggling too, and Mississippi State certainly isn't as stout as, say, Alabama or somebody else on the schedule coming up. So it was a little bit of a head scratcher. But they just stayed true to their game, and eventually the passing game opened up and they turned it on. So I think it's great that the defense can step it up when the offense is struggling, and then likewise, they can put up a lot of points if the defense is struggling. I do think we need to see a little bit more consistency out of Marcel Reed. Right now, I think I like the quarterback situation better at Ole Miss and at Alabama and potentially even Georgia. But I think if Marcel Reed can play up to his potential, I think this could be one of the more dangerous teams in the country.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But nonetheless, good win for the Aggies, and they're going to continue to move on through their SEC slate. Mississippi State will be heading on the bye week with 2 losses. But coming out of the bye week, good luck, because that is going to be a brutal stretch coming up for Mississippi State. They only need 2 more wins to get the bowl eligibility. We'll see if they can find those moving forward. Now let's move on to our last game, and I'll be honest, we probably won't spend more than 5 minutes on this game because this is what we expected. Number 12, Georgia versus Kentucky. Georgia winning this one 35-14. Kentucky had a chance it was almost 21-14, but a touchdown got called back, ruled incomplete. Kentucky was trying to settle for a 26-yard field goal, and it missed wide left. But really, outside of that, it was just Georgia coming off of a rough loss at home against Alabama. We expected Georgia to just come out and dominate. We both expected Kentucky to not have a great year. So what's your overall takeaways? We were really on that to spend too much time on this one.
Yeah, not much here. I think the takeaway for me is Dylan Bell kind of brings a wrinkle to this offense. He's kind of like the Deebo Samuel of their team. Just a good athlete, not necessarily like a wide receiver one, but a guy that you can run across the middle of the field, run a reverse with, even line him up at running back. So I think they found something there because, they could have beat Alabama with a couple better red zone plays. But we saw, Stockton wasn't able to run it in, or they brought in Cash Jones and he wasn't big enough. So I think a guy like Bell could be a big time weapon for them going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So Georgia gets back in the win column. We'll see if Kentucky can ever find a win once again. But this stretch coming up for the Cats isn't going to be so kind to them. So that is our games for the week in week number 6. Now let's see how we picked them. Wade and I went 4-1. I'm kicking myself for not picking Florida. I was really had a Gator logo. And then I changed it. But 4-1 for us. Chet went 3-2. He picked Vanderbilt in Texas. So once again, he tried to go with Diego Pavia. After the game, though, he was happy that Alabama, because if you watch the Netflix documentary, maybe his attitude rubbed off on Chet the wrong way. But nonetheless, 4-1, 4-1, and 3-2. Whenever we get some more good games coming up, we'll have some more guest pickers on. So definitely tune into that moving forward. We already had one, did pretty well, had a 5-3 record. We'll see if anybody else can take that down. So let's now move on to our SEC teams in the AP Top 25 poll. And as you can see from the screen, we have a team that has dropped out of the poll, and it is the Texas Longhorns. They went from number 1 to unranked, and it feels like a heartbeat. But we'll go through all of our teams here. Ole Miss was on the bye week, so they remain the same at number 4. Texas A&M and Oklahoma actually flipped. Texas A&M with their big win at home against Mississippi State, now the number 5 team in the country. Oklahoma didn't really do anything to get leapfrogged. They won 44-0 against Kent State, but we see the Sooners at number 6. A couple of movements as well. Alabama moves now into the top 10. They were number 10 heading into this matchup. Now they're number 8. Georgia now back in the top 10. They are now number 10. LSU on the bye week. It's always good when you're on the bye week. You can move up a couple of spots. LSU now at number 11. With a win over South Carolina, potentially, with how all these matchups are setting up, you could see the Tigers back in the top 10 next week. Number 12 is Tennessee. Number 14 is Missouri. And number 20 is Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, honestly, I wouldn't even drop them that much. They dropped them 4 spots. I probably would have kept them like 17, maybe 18 around that spot. But what were your overall takeaways here from the SEC? Do you see a team that shouldn't be where they are? Or do you think that this is just about right?
A team that I'm interested to see about their ranking is Missouri. They're kind of hanging back there behind Tennessee and LSU and Georgia, who've all lost games. So are they more like the number 10 team in the country, or are they more in that Vanderbilt range at number 20? I think we'll know, after they play Alabama. And then, I think the rest of it's pretty well deserved. They're in the top 10. Alabama's hot right now, and then the top line there. They've done nothing to not be ranked in the top 5, top 6. So I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's good as well. I think there is starting to be an argument of whether Miami should be the number 1 team. Ohio State, what's their good loss? What's their good win at this point?
Yeah,
they
that
were
Texas
really banking
discounted
on Texas. Honestly, if
Same
I
to go for
was
Oregon,
a
man.
voter, I would have Miami number 1. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you, because Oregon and Ohio State had good wins at the time, but they've both been discounted.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that is our SEC teams in the AP Top 25 poll. We're going to continue to track that the rest of the season. And like I mentioned every single week, there's going to be a lot of changes, as you can see here, from week to week. We've had teams shuffle in and out. We'll see if we have any new teams. Not looking likely unless, Mississippi State could get back on track after their 2 recent losses, or if Texas can find a way to upset Oklahoma, but we shall see. Now let's move on to SEC Fantasy Week 6 results. The win column, I have 4. You have 1. We'll see if you can pick up another win. You were in the negatives last week. But let's see if you can get back into the positives heading into week number 6. So overall, looking at this, your quarterback and defensive duo played really well. So take us through your team and how they did.
Yeah, I think that the key to SEC fantasy is quarterback and defense, and usually the rest takes care of itself. I think Ty Simpson led the SEC in passing. So I think that was a solid pick there. He continues to impress. Le'Veon Moss, like you said, I fell on the wrong side of the committee. It was not Moss's day to shine, but that's okay. I think that we'll see him on here again. He did have a long touchdown taken away that, as you'll see, that could come into play here in our final score. And then Sategna, yeah, he had a solid game, pacing Oklahoma and receiving, and I think he had a touchdown as well.
He had 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns. All right. So yeah, he's a guy that we might see a little bit more too. And the Georgia defense, I mean, 270 yards in an SEC game, not too shabby. And I'm back in the positives, y'all. 175. That's a good week.
That's a pretty solid week, and especially, Georgia defense going up against another SEC team, you will take that every single day of the week because some of our defenses in the SEC against, a group of 5 team has given up more than that. So that is definitely something to take note of moving forward. Now let's move on to my team. You can see, outside of a couple of people, like especially Jadon Ball and Oklahoma's defense, not really too much to be excited about on my roster this week. Marcel Reed, I think we just need to take a break from him a little bit, let him figure it out because 210 yards is pretty mid, to be honest with you. He did have like 180 yards passing, and then he had it on 30 yards rushing. So last week for you, he had like negative 23 yards rushing. This week, he stayed in the positives, didn't really get pressured or sacked that much. But Marcel Reed finishes with 210. Jadon Ball, running back for Florida, definitely was the right spot of that. He did have a touchdown to go along with 123 yards. Most of those came on the ground. He did have 10 added receiving yards to get to that 123 total. And Colby Young, I was watching the game and the depth chart. I was wondering, is Colby Young injured? Is he even on the field? And then I saw pop up. Colby Young has caught 1 catch for 9 yards, and that was it for him. Don't know what happened.
Colby.
He's really been consistent wide receiver 1 for Georgia, and for some reason, Gunnar Stockton just wasn't looking his way. So you know what? I don't even know what happened. Just sounds like my real life fantasy team at this point. But Oklahoma's defense, 135 yards. I mean, it's Kent State. That's really what I expected. And that was mainly the difference as I win this one 207 to 175. And like I brought up last week, yes, the streak continues. Every time I win SEC fantasy, my other fantasy team disappoints. So maybe I should just do SEC fantasy, just quit fantasy football because it's very stressful. It's very aggravating, especially when you're losing like this. I know, Wade, you can attest to that. But yeah, once again, I win this one 5-1. Wade, you're running out of weeks here to kind of catch up. So hopefully you can get back on track here. All right. So we will. Yeah. You have anything to say before we move on?
I was just going to say that's an unfortunate one because everything did play well. 175 is usually enough to win at this point in the year. But I think that last rule there, once you draft a defense, you can't use them again. That's been the difference this year. You've strategized it quite nicely, and Oklahoma playing Kent State in the heart of the SEC schedule was a good find. That's something that I didn't consider, and it certainly got you the win this week.
Yeah, I learned from it last year when I kind of was just kind of crumbling down the stretch there when I was running out of defenses. So I'm making sure that this year I have a couple of good defenses left once it comes to October and November. But let's go ahead now to our SEC fantasy rules. Just to recap for you, if you've been here every single week, then you've heard this before. But here's our roster: 1 quarterback, a running back, a receiver, and a defense. So pretty generic. And then once we get to the bowl slate, we will add on to 2. We'll have to see how many SEC teams are in the playoff. We'll get there when we get there. But you cannot draft the same player twice in back-to-back weeks. We also have a rule where you have to draft a player from at least, all the SEC 16 teams. So far, we've been keeping track on that on the side. And then once you draft a defense, you can't use them again. So we've already used 6 defenses. So the 7th one will be used moving forward. Now let's go on to our SEC fantasy draft. And I actually used my first pick on the quarterback position because all of the defenses are playing conference games this week. So it's just a matter of which one you want it. What quarterbacks? 2 new faces here on the show. Trinidad Chambliss from Ole Miss and Joey Aguilar from Tennessee. I feel like this is a lock for both of these quarterbacks to at least get 300 total yards this week, especially with their matchups. So talk about Trinidad Chambliss, a quarterback that we've been bringing up every time we talk about Ole Miss, but this is your first time taking him here in SEC Fantasy.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Trinidad.
Yes.
I think it's well deserved. I mean, if he can keep up the pace that he's had in his first two starts, I think we'll see him more often. Same with your guy Aguilar, getting him on the show as well. He's been amongst the SEC leaders in all passing categories. Really fits Josh Heupel's offense well. So I think this is a cool segment to have these guys side by side because honestly, we kind of thought quarterback might be what holds each of these teams back because they were bringing in these last minute transfers that come out of fall camp and one way or another find themselves starting for two top 15 teams. So it's a pretty cool storyline. Guys that both had success at the lower levels of college football and have translated nicely to SEC ball.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Trinidad coming from Ferris State, Joey Aguilar coming from App State. He was actually making his way to UCLA, and then Nico went to UCLA. So Joey found his way to Tennessee, and the matchup is beautiful as you can get against Arkansas. Last time we saw him, this team gave up 56 against Notre Dame, and Tennessee's offense, to be honest with you, is better than Notre Dame's rushing attack. I mean, you have Jeremiah Love in the backfield, but Joey Aguilar, the way of this offense, honestly, you could just went with the Tennessee quarterback, running back, and receiver. You probably would win this week because this is going to be a revenge game once again because last year Arkansas took down Tennessee. Obviously, that was a different quarterback at the time, Joey Aguilar this time. But what's crazy about this? Heading into the preseason SC Fantasy, we thought we would have seen like Garrett Nussmeier a couple of times, Arch Manning, DJ Lagway. We haven't really seen too many of those guys this season so far. So it's a lot of new faces. It's just really the parity of the season so far. So Aguilar and Chambliss will be the quarterbacks of Week 7. Now let's move on to the running backs. Torrey Blaylock, the Oklahoma running back, in a good matchup against Texas. And this is Caden Durham or whatever LSU running back actually wants to show up and run the football for them for my side. So talk about Blaylock's matchup against the Texas defense that just gave up the kitchen sink against Florida's rushing attack.
And that is why you see Mr. Blaylock on your screen. We're going to play copycat here and hope that he can have a performance like your guy Ball had against this defense.
He was a ball.
Yeah. Look, you wouldn't think that you'd be picking on the Texas Longhorns defensive front, but it is a unit that's not as good as it's been in the past. They got a lot of talent in the NFL at this point. But yeah, this guy's a freshman. They have Jalen Ott, who a couple years ago led, I think, the whole country in rushing. He was banged up last year. Cal made the weird transition to the ACC. He kind of fell off, but resurfaced at Oklahoma, and I thought he would step right in and be the next big Oklahoma running back. I mean, that's a running back powerhouse. It just hasn't been the case for whatever reason. They're kind of running a committee with him and Blaylock, and as of late, Blaylock's been the more impressive player. He's getting more carries, so I'm going with the hot hand here, and all of a sudden, what seems to be a favorable matchup.
Yeah, I definitely like that pick very much. I'm going to be going with Caden Durham. I know he didn't play against Ole Miss, and I know that you're probably scratching your head, especially if you're an LSU fan. Why the hell are you picking one of our running backs? Because we haven't been able to run the football whatsoever.
Hey, that photo right there was against South Carolina last year.
Yeah, that's why I picked that photo, because Caden Durham last year, whenever LSU was dead in the water, was the only player on the field that can actually – moved the football very well against South Carolina's defensive front. To be honest with you, outside of Dylan Stewart, there hasn't been really too many outside of that. I mean, Kentucky, of all teams, was able to get a 100-yard rusher in Seth McGowan, who is the only player you're probably going to see here from Kentucky on SEC Fantasy. But whether it's Durham or Juwan Johnson that I have to go to here, I do expect Durham to be on the field here. But this LSU offense just has to get going some way or not, because if it doesn't, then everything's just going to fall and crumble on this LSU program as fast as it can. But it's at home. It's at night. I do expect Caden Durham in this LSU rushing game to find something coming off of the bye week here. So I'm not expecting like 150 yards from him. If I can get like a solid 70 plus, because I know he can, get a couple of catches too. I will take anything from there. So Caden Durham and Torrey Blaylock, all your two running backs for the week. Now let's move on to the pass catchers, two faces that you have already seen here in our SEC fantasy drafts. Mario Craver from Texas A&M, and then Jeremy Bernard of Alabama. Craver's got a matchup against a Florida secondary that has definitely been exposed a couple of times. I'm surprised he didn't go with KC Concepcion, but I went with Mario Craver a couple of weeks back. Didn't really do much. So what are you looking for Craver's matchup against the Gators?
Yeah, I think much like their running backs, you can pick one or the other and hope you fall on the right side. But Craver kind of runs more of the underneath routes, and he's a big play threat to get out in open space. They had a couple deep balls to him as well that could have been touchdowns. They were underthrown, and one was a pass interference. I just think he fits well with what Marcel Reed's trying to do, and if Marcel Reed can improve a little bit, I could see one of those deep balls going for a touchdown against the Gators. The other side of this is Florida does have one of the better corners in the conference, and I think he's going to be stuck like glue on Concepcion. So I see him being more of a weapon in the red zone, whereas I see Craver as more of like the field stretcher in this particular game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I was looking at the list here that I haven't yet to pick an Alabama player, which is odd to me. I don't know how I lost that, but I'm going to go with Jeremy Bernard. Like your scenario, I could have either went with Ryan Williams or Bernard. I mean, both have really been playing well over the past couple of weeks. I expect this to be honestly a shootout in Columbia. I think both offenses will at least get into the 30s. So I'm just going to be playing here into the shootout and give me Jeremy Bernard. He's really been consistent. When Ryan Williams was struggling at the start of the season, it was Bernard. So I think Bernard continues his hot streak on the road against a Missouri defense that has really been playing well over the past couple of weeks. Speaking of the defenses, two defenses that we hope are playing well in week number 7 is Ole Miss in Georgia. Ole Miss got a matchup against Wazoo, a team that we're usually accustomed to being decent, but this year, I mean, they're 2-3. Nothing really to sneeze at. Georgia, they got a matchup on the road against Auburn, which is, never want to touch a defense in a rivalry game, but I'll talk about my matchup and why I picked Georgia. So Ole Miss, talk about Ole Miss's defense and how they can really shut down this Washington State defense, because we just saw Ole Miss defense play one of their best games coming off of that bye week, against LSU. You could say what you want about LSU's offense, but it was really nice to see Ole Miss's defense step up in that game.
Yeah, I think the defense impressed us. I think they're ahead of schedule. They're going to have to be with that schedule coming up. So this is kind of one final tune-up for them. It's more about the opponent. I mean, this is not the Mike Leach offense at Washington State. This is not Cam Ward playing for them. This is not John Mateer. Yeah, this team is going to I mean, their best hope is if Gardner Minshew's in the stands back in his home state and gets to suit up for the Cougars, because I just don't see this one being pretty. Unfortunately, Washington State just kind of got messed over by the realignment, and at the moment, despite being a larger state school that typically played at the Power 5 level, they're recruiting like a Group of 4 team. And we've already seen Ole Miss make quick work of maybe one of the best Group of 4 teams in Tulane. So I don't see this game being anywhere close, and I think it's a good time to get that Rebel defense in there.
Yeah, I figure you're going to pick the Rebels because I already used them early in the season. I saw that you didn't have a check mark by them, so I was like, yeah, that's going to be like one of his first picks. That Ole Miss is going to be off the board. Georgia is going to be the defense. I mean, they play pretty well against Kentucky, and Auburn's offense hasn't really proven too much. The last couple of weeks, I mean, against A&M, didn't really do too much. Oklahoma didn't really do too much either, so I know it's at home. I don't really care. Auburn's offense still is poor, and Georgia's defense, I definitely think, they're not as elite as they have been in the past couple of years, but, it's going to be good enough for me. I'm not, if they give me around 300 yards, we'll take it. Above 400, well, Georgia, I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to forget about you the rest of the season. That's what the rule is anyways. So hoping, around 300, maybe under 300 yards. I'll take that. I mean, A&M, held this Auburn offense to 177 yards. So it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility, but this rivalry is always weird, so you never know what's going to happen. So Ole Miss and Georgia, the two defenses, that's our roster for week number 6. We'll be back on next week's show whenever we get the results and then draft our teams heading into week 8 of this season. Now let's head into week 7. We'll have our games and pick them. We have a couple more games this week. We only had 5. We had a lot of teams on the bye. Still have some teams on the bye this week, but we have a big matchup leading off the slate with a ranked versus ranked matchup. Oklahoma and Texas would have been a big time game in the preseason. Now it's kind of fallen off. You have some other underrated matchups too. So overall, pretty solid slate here in week number 7. And we're going to lead right off to our SEC Talk game of the week right away here at 11 a.m. I hate that this is 11 a.m. game, but I guess the conference didn't know that this was going to be a top 15 matchup at the time that they released the times here. But number 8, Alabama at number 14, Missouri. Alabama only with the one loss against Florida State, but they are looking very good over the last couple of weeks. Missouri, nobody is talking about this team. They are quiet, undefeated, coming off of the bye week, had a couple of more extra days to rest. Meanwhile, Alabama has really been in some physical contests the last 2 weeks of the season. So how do you see this one playing out? I know we're very high on Missouri. So you have winning this one between the Crimson Tide and the Tigers.
Yeah, I think it's a shame this one's at 11 a.m. as well, but it does mean I'll get to watch it as I'll be at the LSU game this weekend. Yeah. So I am happy for that. Yeah, like you said earlier, I mean, I could see this being a shootout. I don't know. I mean, I think that Ahmad Hardy's going to get his. I know this is a tough matchup, a tough team to run the football on, but I just think in terms of volume, he's going to get 100 yards. Likewise, I think Ty Simpson's going to throw for 300. I think it kind of comes down to, does Alabama play with more physicality than Missouri, and they just push them around on the ground game too? Because if that's the case, I think they win this game. Or does Prbula stick there in the pocket and get close to 300 yards on his own, much like Castellanos did in the opener? Something just tells me that Alabama is going to come away in this one, though. I do think that Missouri is going to give them a fight, but I think at the end of the day, this is just a more talented team, and I think they're going to force Prbula into a mistake late.
Yeah, so this is definitely going to be a big-time matchup. I mean, these are two offenses that are really playing well. You got Bo Prbula versus Ty Simpson, and the running backs, like you mentioned, Ahmad Hardy versus Jam Miller. Jam Miller missed the first couple of weeks of the season with an injury, but he's really been playing well. I almost picked him in SC Fantasy this past week because he really looked solid against a Vanderbilt defensive front that really played well in that one. Missouri's, defense, gives points up. That Kansas game, they did look good in the first half. I mean, it looks like Kansas was going to wrap them in the second half. So you really need to see a complete, overall team in this one, because if Missouri, this Missouri offense could definitely win this one if it gets to a shootout. If Missouri's defense, though, could make a couple of stops and force Alabama, not really to beat them, because, Ty Simpson has proven in the past couple of weeks that he can beat them. But to be honest with you, Alabama is a good team and all, but I don't even care. I could see Alabama win this one by 20. I'm just going to do it because Missouri is a team that I know you and I have been high on. It's a matter of time that we pick them in a big-time matchup, and I see this one. I don't care if it's at 6 a.m., 11 a.m., or 7 p.m. I was going to pick Mizzou and ride with our boy Ahmad Hardy. I think he's going to have a really solid outing. I mean, you saw Cedric Alexander get a couple of big runs, and I think that Bo Prbula, he's a dual-threat quarterback, not as much as Diego Pavia. But I think this Missouri offense is very talented. And, Alabama's secondary has really been gettable this season. So give me Missouri in like a 38-35 type of game. I think it's going to get to a shootout. But give me Mizzou and the home team to pull off the upset, if you want to call it. But Alabama only a 3.5-point favorite. So Vegas is trying to tell you a little something about Mizzou. Jets going to go with Alabama, and this is why I picked Mizzou. I did not just want to go with all Alabama logos in a matchup like this. somebody need to be different, and I'll take the bite there with the Tigers. Now let's move on to the next game. Like you mentioned, Washington State at number 4, Ole Miss. The line is the Rebels are a solid 32.5-point favorite. So like I mentioned, when this is not your grandma's Washington State team, I say grandma's. It was like a couple of years back when you had Cam Ward and Gardner Minshew. But you had the Rebels continuing their undefeated season here.
Yeah, I mean, I've already touched on it. This just isn't the same kind of game it would have been like 3 or 4 years ago. So that's a shame. But yeah, give me Ole Miss here. I think Chambliss continues to build on what he's got going. And if they wanted to, they could probably just run Lacey 20 times up the middle and win this game.
Yeah, I mean, this Washington State defense hasn't really, really made a mark on any opposing offenses. They play Washington, give up 59. Damon Williams, that's an explosive offense. So I could see Ole Miss get into the high 40s. Maybe they even reach the 50s. Like you mentioned, you could see a lot of Kawan Lacey. The receivers are definitely involved, Caden Lee and Harrison Wallace. But, I mean, this is just going to be a rout, and Ole Miss is going to continue their dominance here. I look for the defense to continue to improve week in and week out, because I think a lot of people just look at that Arkansas game. These people are just looking to one game and be like, oh, Ole Miss's defense is trash. I don't think Ole Miss's defense is as bad as people think, so give me Ole Miss. Jets going to go with the Rebels, so all rolling with Ole Miss there in this matchup. Now let's move on to the next one. It's another 2:30 game, the Red River Rivalry. You could call it the Red River Shootout, or we could call it another name, depending on how you see this one moving forward. Number 6, Oklahoma versus Texas, the annual matchup in Dallas. Like I mentioned in the preseason, this was easily looking like a top 5 matchup between both of these teams, with Texas already with 2 losses, Oklahoma undefeated. If you're looking at the line here, Texas is still the favorite here at 2.5. Don't know why. Whatever Vegas is smoking, I guess, whatever. But Oklahoma versus Texas, it's always it feels like it's always weird. It's either a blowout or a close game. But what do you got between the Longhorns and the Sooners?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the angle for Vegas is that Oklahoma, still is playing with a backup quarterback in all likelihood. They're probably not the same scoring threat as they would be if Mateer was in there. And somewhere deep down there, Texas is a talented football team, and Arch Manning, should be an elite quarterback. I mean, too many people that make a lot of money doing this kind of stuff wouldn't put their reputation on the line if he wasn't. So at some point, this team's going to pop off. Will it be on this stage? I don't think so. I think Oklahoma is going to eke out a win here. But no, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. And honestly, I don't think it's going to be that high scoring. I think it's going to be like a 21-15 type game, 21-14.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game that Texas really can't lay down for. We'll see, John Mateer plays or not. If he does, then this definitely a game could get out of, could really turn sideways in this one. But I don't really think that it matters in this one, because I think it's more of how is Texas offense going to remotely move the football against an Oklahoma defense that's really feeling themselves. I mean, Florida's defense is good, but this is going to be the best defense that Texas will face. I mean, outside of Ohio State, they face a lot of good defenses. This is really a neutral site game. I know that Arch Manning has, struggled both at home and on the road, but this is a rout, to be honest with you. I just don't really believe in Texas anymore. Their defense, honestly, isn't as good as we thought. I mean, Florida was able to run the football effectively against them. I think Oklahoma is really going to do the same here. I just don't see that Texas is going to move the football very well. So give me Oklahoma at least by 14 points here. So give me the Sooners. Jets also going to go with Oklahoma. So I don't think heading into this matchup in the preseason, we would all have been on Oklahoma. Maybe we would have had like 1 on Texas and 2 on Oklahoma, but clean sweep here in the rivalry game in Dallas. Now let's move on to our next matchup. Arkansas at number 12, Tennessee. If you remember last year, Arkansas pulled off the upset against the Vols. That was a big-time win at the time to save Sam Pittman's job. In reality, well, didn't really help too much because Sam Pittman is out the door. Now Bobby Petrino will be taking over as the interim head coach. I've already seen, most of their defensive staff, get fired at this point. So you have Arkansas doing it again in back-to-back years, or do you have the Vols really sticking it to the Hogs this year?
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those kind of revenge games that you could see. They lost on the road the year before. Now they're back at home. Um, I don't really see an angle here for Arkansas, other than maybe just playing inspired football for Petrino as the interim. But Tennessee's too talented to lose this ball game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is going to be, really a Tennessee runaway here. Just Arkansas, their offense will keep them in the game for as long as they can. But that defense, how the heck are they going to stop Joey Aguilar in this offense, especially at home? Yeah, like you mentioned, this is the same angle that I had with Alabama in that revenge game against Vandy. I think that Tennessee is in that same spot. They're going to run the score as much as they can and give me the balls. I think that they win this one like 42 to like 17, something like that. I think this is going to be over by the half. Chet's going to go with the Vols. So all rolling with Big Orange there in this matchup over Arkansas. Now let's move on to our next matchup, an SEC showdown between Florida at number 5, Texas A&M. A&M undefeated. Florida coming off of that big win at home against then number 9 Texas. So who do you got between the Aggies and the Gators? A&M was able to beat the Gators on the road last season in a pretty dominant fashion. Do you have that continuing in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, at least there's something to pause and think about here with Florida after their impressive performance. But I don't know. That's a tough night atmosphere. Kind of surprised Texas A&M didn't save the blackout for this one.
Yeah, no.
But it was pretty electric to watch. So I think A&M continues to roll here.
Yeah, I mean, this, I could definitely see this one coming down to the wire. I think that Florida's defense, like they have had in pretty much every game this season, their defense is going to keep them as long as they can. And it's going to be like, can you not do what Mississippi State did? You got to be able to move the ball effectively, especially on the run game. Can Jadon Ball get going here? Can DJ Lagway continue to improve week in and week out? I think this is going to be a close game. A&M is favored right now. I'll go with the home team here once again. I think that this defense is really playing well. The way that your receivers like Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver has been playing, I think that's going to be a little bit too much offensive firepower for Florida to handle. So give me Texas A&M in this one. So no 2-0 for the Gators against the state of Texas as we're all rolling with the Aggies this week on the Saturday night matchup, which I'm definitely going to be looking forward to watching this weekend. Now let's move on to the Deep South's oldest rivalry. I almost called it the cocktail party, but that's Georgia, Florida. But we have number 10 Georgia at Auburn. Like I mentioned, this game, it feels like Auburn can be like 0-5, and Auburn somehow finds a way to keep this one close, especially when it's at Jordan Hare. So do you have this one being a close game? And who you got between the Dogs and the Tigers?
Yeah, it's always a close one, whether it should be or not. Hence why Georgia's only favored by 3. But obviously they're the more talented football team. Tough road atmosphere, though, for sure. I mean, Auburn's definitely underrated in that regard. It is at night. I'm still going to go with Georgia, but I do think it's going to live up to the billing of being a close game. I think the crowd's going to keep them in it. Yeah. I think the way Georgia's playing right now isn't very explosive, but I do think the talent discrepancy will prevail.
Yeah, I think Auburn's in a similar spot where like Florida was last week. You're coming off of the bye week. You're very desperate for a win, and you need a win to really save Hugh Freeze's job at this point because the schedule coming up is really not kind for Hugh Freeze moving forward if he does want to stay in Auburn. Like you mentioned, we saw, Georgia last time we went on the road. They gave up a ton of points against Tennessee's offense. Auburn, I mean, their offense isn't even near what Tennessee's is. I mean, Auburn, the only way I can really see this going if, Georgia's defensive line has some problems against Jackson Arnold in the run game, because you saw that in game number 1 against Baylor, but you really haven't seen that outside of that game. So I think it's going to be close to just how the rivalry game plays, especially on the road at the Plains. But I am going to go with Georgia. They're the more talented team. Gunnar Stockton's really been playing well. So I'm going to go with the Dogs. I'm going to give you a score because you don't never know what happens in this game. So give me the Dogs nonetheless. Jets also going with Georgia. So we're all in agreement outside of the only ranked matchup this week. We will see if that continues as we move on to our last game of the night at 6:45 on SEC Network. South Carolina at number 11 LSU. The last time that we saw both of these teams, South Carolina was out to a strong lead. Looks like they were going to blow the doors off of LSU, and LSU in a big way, was able to respond, and on a missed field goal at the end of the buzzer, LSU was able to come all the way back to beat South Carolina at William Bryce Stadium last season. The last time I believe that these two teams faced off in Tiger Stadium was in COVID, when there was about 10,000 people in that stadium, and LSU with them, and that was TJ Finley as the starting quarterback. So times have changed ever since both of these teams have faced off in Tiger Stadium. But there's always some memorable matchups against these two teams. I could bring up, like the fake field goal that results in the touchdown, the LSU game, the Jeremy Hill game where South Carolina wore those god-awful camouflage uniforms.
Oh, yeah, baby. The battle armor.
You've really been in tune to this rivalry, it feels like, for like a decade now, and like your whole life now. But how do you see this one going down? You're going to be at the game, so it's going to be a lot of fun getting into that environment. What do you got between the Gamecocks and the Tigers? Both teams coming off of a bye, and both teams really desperate of a win here.
All right. Before I make my prediction, a little sidebar about that Jeremy Hill game, the gray jerseys. South Carolina was having probably their best season ever.
Oh, yeah. And like, number 2 heading into that game?
Yeah. Top 5, I think. The year prior, they had gone to the SEC championship, I believe, and got just beat by Cam Newton, but everybody did that year. But yeah, LSU got to host South Carolina. South Carolina came down here. Connor Shaw was playing lights out. Kind of a back and forth ball game. And LSU had Sam Montgomery, who was from Rock Hill, South Carolina. And man, he was just making plays left and right. And I think he ended up sacking Shaw to end it. And I was just like, man, who could not want to be a Gamecock and come down here and play for the Tigers? And then 5 years later, that's exactly what I did. So, hey, look, there's something about LSU. I can't blame Sam now. Much different teams at this point.
Yeah, that was a vintage LSU defense in those matchups.
Yeah. But I think LSU's got some guys kind of like that now. And I think South Carolina's got the best quarterback they've had since Connor Shaw. So I think we're in for a treat.
Yep.
I think it could be pretty similar. I was very happy that this was a night game. I've got some buddies coming in that, this will be their first LSU game, and definitely wanted it to be at night. All that to say, I think the home field advantage plays to LSU's favor. I think Sellers has a good game, but ultimately South Carolina can't run the football, and neither can LSU, but I think they start to figure it out. Give me the Tigers.
Yeah, we saw last year's game. Lenore Sellers run hog wild on LSU, so that's really been LSU's problems. I mean, even against Trinidad and Chambliss, they had some problems. So, yeah, I mean, if you're doubting LSU in this game, they're a 9.5-point favorite in this one. If I was a betting man, I probably wouldn't take that, because it feels like this game, outside of like a couple of games in the past, it feels like this game always comes down to the wire. But yeah, I think that LSU's rushing game really has to get going. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, injured or not, Brian Kelly's been saying coming off of the bye week that we're going to be getting a healthy Garrett Nussmeier. We will see on Saturday night, people, if he is healthy or not, or if everybody was just lying to us this season. Because if he is injured, we better see Michael Van Buren, because if LSU starts off slow, I know Wade and a lot of LSU fans will be booing, because it's going to be a lot of frustrating times at the start of offensive struggles. But I really can't tell you. I think this game's either going to be a low-scoring battle. It's going to be a crazy shootout between these both teams. I don't think there's going to be any in between, but home environment will play to the potential. And I think that, hell, if LSU was able to win that game where they played really awful last year, I know South Carolina fans be like, oh, well, you had a couple of penalties playing at that, whatever. But I'm going to go with LSU in this one. I'm not even going to say I think the offense gets back on track. I just trust LSU's defense more at this rate than South Carolina's. So give me the Tigers. Not going to give you a score prediction. I'm just going to say LSU wins. Not even going to say by how many either. But Chet's also going to go with LSU. So we all have the Bayou Bengals bouncing back after their tough loss on the road in Oxford against Ole Miss. And LSU coming up after this one, not going to be easy. They'll have Vandy and Texas A&M. That'll be their next couple of games. South Carolina good luck the next rest of the season, because that's going to be a gauntlet moving forward for them as well. So that is all of our Week 7 games. Now let's get to our hot topics. Well, Mark Stoops said in a press conference after the beatdown over Georgia that he pretty much says zero chance that he's walking away from Kentucky. Do you even think that he's going to get that opportunity to walk away for Kentucky, or do you think he's going to get fired?
Not this year. I mean, there's too many marquee job openings out there for Kentucky to hang. Yeah. I mean, Mark Stoops isn't a bad coach. I think that Kentucky's just got to be reasonable with their expectations. This conference is hard to win in. It was hard to win in before NIL. It's even harder to win in now. So I think they're just going to have to ride the highs and accept that there's going to be lows like this. Honestly, I kind of see Mark Stoops being a lifer for Kentucky. And what are they going to do? Pony up $20 million to get rid of him and then have no money to build a roster for the new coach? I mean, it just doesn't seem very sustainable. I think I'd put more effort into trying to make some splash transfers this offseason.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But the next question is, I know that we had this brought up in one of our group chats. Was the media too high on the Texas Longhorns and old Arch Manning?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of my thought from the get-go. I mean, I didn't think it would be like this. But I thought it was a lot of confidence in something we haven't seen. And for a guy that's got to grow into the role. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. They're not ranked.
All right, we'll stay in the state here of Texas. Go to the Aggies for this next hot topic. Is this finally the year for Texas A&M to make some noise?
I'll let you take that one first. I don't want to be the one that says they are.
I think they are. They definitely proven me. I think, I agree with you. I think the defense is definitely getting there. I think the offense, the inconsistencies, they have to clean that up, because you can't really be inconsistent coming up in the schedule. I think the schedule, honestly, really looking at it, I mean, you got Florida, you have Arkansas, and then you'll have LSU. So I think LSU on the road is definitely going to be a tough one. But to be honest with you, it could be a gettable game. We'll just have to see what LSU looks at coming out of the bye week. But, they have their last game is on the road at Texas. So to be honest with you, I see their really floor at this point is 10-2. I think that they either go 10-2 or 11-1 at this point. Could they go undefeated? Sure, I can definitely see it. Their schedule is definitely manageable. So, yes, I'm going to agree with that. I think that the way that the top of the SEC has been looking, like Texas has really fallen off. We'll see if Ole Miss can survive their schedule moving forward. Georgia, Alabama. So, as wide open the SEC is, I think that this is definitely the year for Texas A&M to make some noise and make the playoff for the first time in their program history. So, now let's move on to our next team. I'm sure you're going to want to answer this one. What are we looking from LSU out of the bye week?
I think you touched on it with the pick with Caden Durham. Can LSU run the football? Is Caden Durham healthy? And then on the flip side, can you stop the run? Can you stop mobile quarterbacks? Because they haven't really faced one until they got Trinidad Chambliss. Cade Klubnak, he can be mobile. So kudos to the Tigers for shutting him down. But outside of that, pretty unproven. Lagway's not a guy that likes to run unless he has to. So this will be their first real test against a true dual threat quarterback. And have they made the adjustments from last year? I think yes. I mean, yeah, it's the same defensive coordinator, but it is pretty much an entirely new unit, minus the guys that weren't the issue with Weeks and then like Jacoby and Gilroy. But everybody else that got beat last year is pretty much new. So I think I'm not saying they're going to shut down Lenore Sellers coming out the bye week, but I do think we'll see that.
But you want to limit the big plays that you weren't able to last year.
And get off the field on third down.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. That's exactly what I want to see. Get off the field on third down and limit the big plays. I don't even think the defense has been that big of a problem. The defense in every single game, and to be honest with you, that's how you won most of your games. Like in the Clemson game, the Florida game, even the Louisiana Tech game, your offense only put up a merely 23 points. So, yeah, I really just want to see a really complete team moving forward. Now, is that going to change overnight? We will see. We're not going to know until this Saturday night if really things are moving in the right direction or they are still the same things that we saw before the bye week in that Ole Miss game. So we'll see how the Tigers look. If they lose this one against South Carolina, then Baton Rouge might burn down on Saturday night. That's all I got to say. But yeah, that is our games. That is our hot topics. We do have a couple of comments, obviously, from my mother bringing up the Saints finally winning a game today. So there we go.
Yeah,
on
kudos
the board.
to the Saints.
Had another, also shout out to Neil and his team, the Tennessee Titans, kicked that late a game-winning field goal. So shout out.
Everybody got their first win. The Panthers got their first win.
There we go, getting on the board there. And then my mom also said, "Run, Nuss, run." So wants to see more, maybe not really Jaden Daniels runs that we saw a couple of years back, but maybe if you have a wide open field, maybe Nussmeier take advantage of some open space and get a couple of yardage there. So we will see how LSU and all these teams look in week number 7. We have that big marquee matchup at 11 a.m. between Alabama and Mizzou. And then after that, really the rest of the slate is going to be a lot of solid games. You have a couple of rivalry games and a couple of games in the SEC that you haven't, you saw in like in the past couple of years. But, South Carolina, like I mentioned, hasn't been to Baton Rouge in a couple of years. Obviously, that will change with the new schedule and format. So that's definitely going to be exciting news to see, where you're going to have teams pretty much going to every stadium every 4 years. So that is it for our show here in week number 7. We'll be back next week recapping everything that has happened in week number 7, and then we will move ahead to week number 8 as we are now in the month of October. So this is really where the season gets real and teams start falling off of the playoff picture, and teams make their headway heading into the month of October and November. So we appreciate everybody tuning in to tonight's show. As always, it's going to depend on the Sunday night game logistics of where we go to Sunday night or Monday night. But we appreciate everybody for tuning in to tonight's show. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you back here right here on SEC Talk.